has requested that the army be put on standby in the event of a COVID surge among staff at Dublin Airport. The plan to deploy up to 100 defence personnel has been criticised, but the DAA CEO, Dalton Phillips, has described the move as a prudent contingency. Long queues and missed flights have continued at the airport in recent weeks, despite the hiring of more staff. Now, we're joined on the line by Eoghan Corry, a travel and aviation journalist, editor of Air and Travel magazine, and we'll also be talking to Mark Keane, president of the Permanent Defence Force and Other Ranks Representative Association, PD4. But first of all, Eoghan, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
Now, we regularly beat ourselves up, but we're not the worst airport in Europe, or are we?
Oh, not at all. We're about mid-chart. There's a lot of unexpected queue problems. The German government are talking about changing their labour laws to recruit short-term workers from Turkey and places like that to deal with what is effectively a 15% shortfall in their airports. So we've had those big, runaway queues. Schiphol has been well publicised. The baggage breakdown in Heathrow has been well publicised. Manchester, some of the French airports. But what we see in Dublin has been, two major crunch points. One at the end of March, one at the end of May, that famous Sunday when people missed their flights. Beyond that, it's absolutely strange, stretched to the limit, but it has kept going. And what, by comparison with other airports across Europe have turned to the airlines and said, we can't cancel a percentage of your flights, 10% in the case of Heathrow. Dublin Airport never did that. They just said, we'll try and deal with the force, with the numbers coming through. And effectively they have, but it has been stretched to the limits, apart from those two crunch points where things broke down very badly.
Yeah. Now, there are different elements of the whole passenger experience. There is the bag drop. There is then the security element and all the rest of it. How have the airlines, because they're responsible for their own check-in, they're responsible for their own bag drops, they're responsible for the handling of baggage. I mean, the DAA is getting all the flack. But how have the airlines themselves done their own business?
You're absolutely right. Everything under pressure. There's a lot on social media about the general state of the airport, cleanliness, everything. Check-in, airlines' responsibility. Baggage handling, airlines' responsibility, but also subcontracted companies. And the subcontracted companies that do all those service areas, they're under pressure as well. Same thing, let a lot of people go during COVID, probably underestimated the speed of the return, or some people say they budgeted as tightly as they could for the speed of the return and got caught with staff shortages. Impacted airlines would have included all the airlines that do major hub operations out of Dublin. Lufthansa had check-in problems on more than one occasion where the flight had to be delayed, and the two major Irish airlines seem to be among those in Europe that have done best in pulling it together. Ryanair and Aer Lingus, they grumbled a little bit about the enhanced security checking. Everybody was told about that last September, but they managed to get enough people with the correct passes and things like that to get through the return to summer schedules in March and keep going since then. Aer Lingus under a little bit of well-publicised pressure in recent days, but by comparison, the beginning of May, British Airways cancelled 10% of their summer schedule because they knew they wouldn't be able to handle it. And EasyJet muddled through and last week decided to cancel a similar amount of flights. Air France, Lufthansa, all cancelled parts of the summer schedule. Our two airlines published the schedule, a little bit of tweaking here or there, but more or less kept it in shape. And we have been pretty well served. As I say, stretched to the limit, and security queues of 1 hour would be totally unacceptable in 2019. Half an hour would be unacceptable, but compared with missing flights, people are prepared to put up with it.
Now, what about the other elements of the DAA's operation? The toilets, for example, the public areas. I was listening to an item on our business breakfast programme this morning, and he was talking to a guy who does cleanliness and hygiene at festivals, and no problem in getting 500 people, they have a permanent staff, about 500 people in to do the festivals because they pay well. I mean, what is it about Dublin Airport that it can't be kept clean? It's a fairly basic kind of operation.
This is where the enhanced security check-in caused immense problems. It caused a logjam in January. It's not quite the same as a festival with security clearances. And that's where bringing in the army...
No, but I mean, I'm talking about cleanliness. I'm talking about cleaning toilets, cleaning public areas. If you pay the right amount of money, you will get staff. The airport's not an unpleasant place to work. So who's fallen down there?
You could say Dublin Airport haven't employed and brought people on board. If you're not bringing them back on board at the speed that you need for security checking, you're obviously not doing it in other areas. There is an element of security clearance because when in our childhood, a lot of the service area of Dublin Airport was landside. It's all transferred airside now. So it's a more complicated operation, but the shortcomings in Dublin Airport in their rehiring of staff have been well publicised. And as I say, there would be an element of miscalculation of the numbers, but also an element of budgeting tightly for the return.
Now, Eoghan, the question of airport deployment of the army, what do you make of Minister Ryan's announcement yesterday?
It's pretty late in the day. As you know, it was called for by Michael O'Leary. He has a statement out this morning congratulating them on making that decision. Very early in March, it was sort of regarded then. It was dismissed then. Some other countries have done it. They brought the army in to do the sort of thing that Dublin Airport employees are doing with monitoring of queues, that sort of area. I think it's unlikely they'll be deployed because the numbers game is going in favour of the Dublin Airport security team. About 30 extra personnel a week coming on stream for it. But we are dealing with a very, very tight, very full schedule for the summer. If it happens, this is how it's going to work, Pat. They're not going to be in the terminal dealing with passengers. There are about 100 security personnel through the airport in outer areas, in perimeter fences, things like that are bringing through airport employees, people working on the second runway, all of those operations at the airport. That's where the army will be deployed. And the key to that is it will release about 100 full-time Dublin Airport trained security personnel to work in the terminal. The army, if they're called in, passengers won't see them. I think it's unlikely they'll be called in. There's already been blowback, which was well reported there in the bulletin. And the environment, and I commented on an article in the Examiner this morning on this, the environment where the army were called in for a lot of stopgaps, you see it in reeling in the years, bin strikes, the bus strikes of 75, 79, that really it isn't fit into the modern concept of what the army does as easily. The last time they were suggested for bringing in for a strike in 2000, there was a very considerable reaction against it. I think you covered it yourself at the time. So I see it's unlikely the army will be brought in. But what it will do, and this is important, it gives that sort of reassurance that we won't see the crazy scenes we saw the last Sunday in May again at the airport.
All right, Eoghan, thank you very much.
Always a great pleasure.